This past weekend, we already saw multiple Power 4 teams get an opportunity to play in Week 0, but in today's video, I want to go through and talk about the 10 teams who, in my opinion, will be the worst Power 4 teams for the 2025 college football season. One of the teams that did in fact play this weekend is on my list in Stanford, and they're going to be included. But before we get started with today's video, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about the 10 worst Power 4 teams for the 2025 college football season. So before we get started, I want to say this video is in no particular order, and this is not a ranking video. Alright, so our first team we're going to talk about is the Auburn Tigers. It may not be the most popular team on the list, and Auburn fans might be mad, but I just don't think that the Tigers are all that good this year. The past 2 seasons under Hugh Freeze have not been that special, and I don't know if things change all that much in 2025. Sure, they have former 5-star recruit Jackson Arnold coming in at quarterback, they bring back Cam Coleman at receiver, and they brought in Eric Singleton Jr. from Georgia Tech. But other than that, I think Auburn has a lot of work to do, and their issue, in my opinion, is more so their culture than anything else. They also have a pretty tough schedule, as they will play Baylor in the non-con, and then also play 8 loaded teams from the SEC. I know I said it's not a ranking video, but Auburn is definitely on the upper end of these teams, and who knows, maybe they just proved me wrong. I originally said it's going to be 10 teams, but we're actually going to bump it up to 12, and we're going to talk about the Cal Golden Bears as our next terrible Power 4 team. It's been no secret that Cal has not been good for quite a while now, and it's extremely difficult to win there. Justin Wilcox doesn't have the greatest resume, but for some reason every year his seat is safe, and it feels like he's never going to get fired. Cal had a very difficult offseason as they lost a lot of their top players, with guys like Fernando Mendoza and Jaden Ott both transferring, and they will look to a true freshman quarterback in Jaron Kiawe-Sagavatelli to lead them into the future. He ended up beating out Devin Brown, and I just don't think that this Cal team is really all that good. They've got a couple of good defensive players like TJ Bush, Hezekiah Masses, and Harrison Taggart, but other than that, I'm not sure how the offense will do, as rumor has it, the team does not really like Brian Harsin all that much. They're also now in their second year in the ACC, and they will start out the season with Oregon State, and then 2 weeks later play against Minnesota, and travel on the road to San Diego State. I think there's a good chance that they only win one of those 3 games, and I could see a world in which they go winless there. They should beat Texas Southern, and then games against Stanford and Virginia are also going to be circled, but there's a real chance that Cal wins less than 3 games this year. They are not going to be very good. Speaking of one of those teams that Cal plays against, let's now talk about the Virginia Cavaliers. They have really struggled the last decade or so in college football, as I only really remember their one good season with Bryce Perkins a few years ago. And I don't think that much really changes this year. I feel like Tony Elliott is over his head right now, and it's just really hard to win at Virginia in general, but they have a couple of good players for the 2025 season, including transfer quarterback from North Texas, Chandler Morris, who was near the top of college football statistically last year. Virginia's schedule is interesting, as they'll play against Coastal Carolina and NC State in the first 2 weeks, before they then get William and Mary and Stanford. There's a chance Virginia could go 3-1 in that opening stretch, but after that, the only game I would favor them in is potentially that road matchup with Cal. Who knows how they're going to do, but I don't think Virginia will be all that good. Last season was sort of a disaster for UCF, as they were supposed to be near the top of the Big 12, but ended up finishing missing a bowl game. They wasted their star running back RJ Harvey, but UCF returns in 2025 and a couple of new players. Cam Fancher from Florida Atlantic ended up winning the starting quarterback job, which is sort of shocking to me, and they definitely have plenty of potential, but I'm not quite sure how good they're going to be. UCF returns Jaden Nixon at running back, but I'm not sure who they throw the ball. UCF also has an interesting schedule as they play against Jacksonville State and NC which both should be wins, before a matchup with Bill Belichick and the North Carolina Tar Heels. We'll find out a lot about that game before they then start their 9-game Big 12 schedule, and I think UCF probably wins 4 or 5 games. Going over to the Big 10, we're now going to talk about the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. A lot of people think I'm a Rutgers hater, and I'm definitely not. At the same time, though, I can acknowledge that Rutgers just hasn't really been all that good. Sure, Schiano has done some good things the last couple of years, but Rutgers still is not exactly an elite program by any means, and I see no reason why they're going to be that much better this year. Athlon Kaliakmanis will be back at quarterback, and I do love the addition of DT Sheffield, a transfer from North Texas, but other than that, how are they going to replace Kyle Monungai's production, and how can I expect him to really be all that good? To start the year, they play against Ohio, and I think there is a real chance that Ohio could pull off that upset, as I think they're the best or second best team in the MAC. Then they play Miami of Ohio after that, and Norfolk State. They should go 2-1 in that stretch. But then from there, I'm not sure who I think they would beat. Maybe Purdue, maybe Maryland, but outside of that, I just wouldn't pick them to win another game. Up next, we're going to talk about another Big 12 school in the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Oklahoma State had a lot of hype going into last season as they returned both Alan Bowman and Ollie Gordon, but unfortunately, after a 3-0 start, they had a terrible end of the season. They've now lost both Bowman and Ollie Gordon, and they have to figure out what's next for them. Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy typically had a really good culture, but I'm not sure what's going on anymore. I don't think Oklahoma State is going to be all that great this season, but they start out the year with games against UT Martin, Tulsa, and Oregon. I highly doubt they win that game on the road against Oregon, but they should beat both Tulsa and UT Martin. Honestly, they got one of the easier Big 12 schedules in my opinion, but I still don't think Oklahoma State is all that good. Maybe they win 6 games, maybe they win 4. I don't know yet. Typically, Kentucky has been pretty good under Mark Stoops, but last season they were really terrible. Kentucky was not their usual self, and Brock Vandagriff ended up retiring after the season was over. They'll now move forward with former SEC quarterback Zach Calzada, and while they have a couple of good weapons, it's going to be difficult to replace both Dane Key and Berrien Brown. Kentucky did try their best though, as they ended up getting Jamori Macklin, a wide receiver transfer, and then they bring back Dante Dowdle at running back, and they got Seth McGowan. Some of those guys I feel like have been in college football for quite some time, and in terms of Kentucky's schedule, they will play against Toledo in week 1, which honestly could be a trap game. Things don't get any easier as they play Ole Miss in week 2, and then the rest of their non-con games include Tennessee Tech and Eastern Michigan. Those are the only 2 guaranteed wins I see on their schedule, as besides that, maybe Vanderbilt and maybe Auburn. Other than that, they probably won't be favored in any games, and I don't see Kentucky making a bowl game this season. Moving over to the ACC, let's talk about the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. I know in some metrics they are the worst Power 4 team in college football history, but they have been pretty decent the last decade or so, especially under Dave Clawson. The Deacons were not very good last year, and they now move forward with new head coach Jake Dickert, who ended up being at Washington State for a couple of seasons. They recently named Robbie Ashford their starter for this season over a guy like Deshaun Purdy, and we'll see what Wake Forest can do. Damon Claiborne is back at the running back position, but I've got no idea who will be catching passes for them. In terms of their schedule, they play Kennesaw State and Western Carolina in their first 2 games, which should be wins, but after that, I don't know who I would predict them to beat. Maybe Virginia, maybe NC State, I don't know. But they will get their 3rd win of the season against Delaware most likely, and I think Wake Forest is probably a 4 or 5 win team this year. Moving to the Big Ten, let's talk about the Northwestern Wildcats. They are typically near the bottom, but after a good first season under David Braun back in 2023, many thought Northwestern would take the next step. Instead, they were terrible last year, and I see no reason why they get any better this season. They do bring back Caleb Tiernan, one of the best left tackles in the Big Ten, and they have some talented players, but for the most part, I have no idea how this team is going to work. They brought in Preston Stone, the transfer quarterback from SMU, and he should be pretty decent, but Northwestern's schedule is also pretty difficult. They start out the season with a road matchup against Tulane, and again, I'd not be surprised if the Green Wave pulled that off. They do play against both Western Illinois and UL Monroe, which I think are 2 guaranteed wins, but after that, maybe they beat UCLA, maybe they beat Purdue. At max, I see them winning 4 games. At minimum, I see them winning 2. I just don't think Northwestern is all that great, and we'll see how the Wildcats do this upcoming fall. We're now going to cover our final SEC team on the list and talk about the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Dan Mullen did a great job there, and both Joe Moorhead and Mike Leach were alright, but ever since then, it's been difficult for them. Zach Arnett was not a good hire, and in Jeff Lebby's first season, they weren't great either. They ended up losing some of their top players as Van Buren transferred to LSU, and their top 2 receivers in Mario Craver and Kevin Coleman both left for other SEC schools. Mississippi State is hoping to pick back the pieces, and they have a couple of good players, including South Alabama running back transfer Fluff Bothwell, who's really good, and then they have Jordan Mosley and Aiden Williams. Those are 2 receivers I'm excited to watch. Mississippi State, though, I still don't think will be all that good, as after a game against Southern Miss in week 1, they face off with number 11 Arizona State. I definitely don't think they beat ASU, and besides a game over Alcorn State and maybe Northern Illinois, I don't know who else they beat. Pretty much everyone on their schedule is ranked, and if they're not ranked, they're playing them on the road. I see a 3-9 season coming in for Mississippi State, but maybe Lebby can surprise us and break out. For our second to last team, we're going to talk about a program that's already played. The Stanford Cardinal ended up playing in week 0 against Hawaii, and it was a disaster for them. I think pretty much everyone saw this coming, as going into the offseason, they ended up firing their head coach, they brought in Frank Reich, Andrew Luck became their GM, and it just didn't look like they were taking football all that seriously. I thought Elijah Brown was going to be the starter, but instead they went with sixth-year quarterback Ben Gulbranson, and he did not show anything this past weekend. Against Hawaii, it ended up being close, and they had some bad clock management, and they lost by way of a game-winning field goal. Honestly, I think that was Stanford's best chance at winning a game this season, as in the non-con, they will play against BYU and San Jose State, and San Jose State is near the top of the Mountain West, and it is also on the road against BYU. There's a real chance that Stanford goes winless, and I think at max, they maybe win one game. And for our final team, let's talk about the Purdue Boilermakers out of the Big Ten. Unfortunately, they won the award for the worst Power 4 team last year under Ryan Walters, and he got fired and ran out of town. They brought in Barry Odom, the head coach from UNLV, and I don't think Purdue is really going to be that great. They don't have a great roster, and typically teams don't do one in year one. It's also Purdue. Recently, Ryan Brown was named the starting quarterback as he literally transferred to North Carolina this spring, then transferred back to Purdue. It was definitely an odd circumstance, but I'd say I'm excited to watch Devin Mocka be their running back. I think former big-time recruit Nitro Tuggle should be good at the receiver spot, and then besides that, I have no idea what Purdue is going to do. They played Ball State in week 1, and some people have the Boilers on upset watch, but they should probably win that game and beat Southern Illinois. But after that, I don't know if they win any of their last 10 games. Maybe they beat Northwestern on the road, maybe they beat Rutgers at home, but I don't know. I think Purdue's in for a really rough season, and Barry Odom has a lot of work to do in West Lafayette. But yeah, today I talked about the 12 Power 4 teams that I think are going to be the worst in the country, and let me know your thoughts. If you're a fan of one of these schools, why do you think your team will be better? Who should have been on this list? And which topic should I do next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.